Earlier this week, Dr. Anthony Fauci was called before a Senate hearing, and that hearing was designed to look into what he was doing during the COVID-19 pandemic and some financial decisions that he had oversaw for the agencies that he had been working for. What Dr. Fauci said over 100 times during that hearing was that on the advice of counsel, he was refusing to answer questions, as it implicated his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And so what has been spun is this idea that Dr. Fauci has something to hide, that asserting the Fifth Amendment privilege somehow makes him a criminal. Well, that's far from it. As a criminal defense lawyer in Massachusetts, I advise people every day not to provide information to the government, not because my clients have something to hide, but because we don't know what the allegations are. As Senator Hassan commented, the entire proceedings were designed in order to entrap him. That doesn't mean that he did something wrong and they wanted to trap him. What that means is they wanted to provide all of the statements that he could about any question they could think of. And they would lock him into whatever those answers are and then go looking for evidence afterwards. I have represented scores of people who did not do the things that they were accused of doing. But what it looked like from all of the investigation, it looked like they did. And part of that is using statements against someone and saying, well, it doesn't match up. And that could be a misunderstanding. It could be someone seeing events differently than another person does. The innocent projects that are throughout Massachusetts and the country have tons of examples of people who were wrongfully convicted and exonerated by DNA evidence. Some individuals who, after giving a statement, admitted to a crime that they in fact did not do. That is one of the reasons that an individual should not provide evidence to the government unless they speak to a skilled criminal defense lawyer beforehand. Every day in courts in the Commonwealth, cases are dismissed because the government is unable to proceed against that particular client. Well, if a client gives a statement, even a helpful one, that places them at the scene of the crime, and they say that they were acting in self-defense, that information can be used to say they were there. They did touch the other person without their consent, but they were doing it in self-defense. And what do we have? We have a case about whether or not the client was acting in self-defense, as opposed to a case that might just end in a dismissal because the government doesn't have sufficient evidence to go forward on that day. An example that I give nearly every client who is faced with the prospect of a police investigation or the police want to speak with him is a situation that I dealt with a client who many years ago was accused of a very serious violent offense. That client heard of the allegations, heard the date that they were alleged to have been committed, went down to the police station before speaking to a lawyer, showed his plane tickets to the police department saying, "You got the wrong guy. I didn't do it. I was out of state when this happened." A perfect alibi defense. One of the greatest defenses that anyone can look. I am not the person because I was somewhere else when the crime was alleged to have happened. So what did the police do? Well, they went back to the person who accused him, and that person said, "I must have got the date wrong. It must have been the week before or the week after." Alibi defense gone. Case proceeds to trial. Nobody even knows that originally he gave the wrong date. And the reason being, because he went to the police providing what he thought was helpful information. And that was used in order to change the story. That is exactly what Senator Hassan was talking about when she's saying that the entire proceedings were designed to entrap him. Figure out what Dr. Fauci says and then try to build a case against him. Not providing evidence when the government asks for it does not mean that you are a criminal. It means that you're smart. It doesn't have to be the embattled director of the CDC that takes this advice. It can be a blue-collar worker, a person on Wall Street, a stay-at-home mom. All of these people have the same rights, and that is not to help the government bring a case against you. By advancing those rights, by refusing to provide evidence that can be used against you, it doesn't mean that you have something to hide. It doesn't mean that you're a criminal. It doesn't mean that if you were to say something, it would reveal that you committed a crime. What it means is that you are protecting yourself and you are following the advice of a criminal defense lawyer who would tell you, until we know the situation, do not provide the roadmap that the government is going to use against you.